So now let's go into the actual method of perception. How does it actually take place? See, you have to pay attention because it is not so simple a process, although it happens just like that. You see, now I am seeing this equipment. Immediately I am having an experience of it. But the actual process involved, let us see first what science tells us. What is the process of perception? See, first of all, you see a thing only by the light it throws out at you. Isn't this true? Your physics will tell you this. This is the first point you should know. Now, when that light is thrown at you, what happens? It goes into your visual apparatus. It enters your eye. There's an inverted image formed in your retina. An inverted image of that object carried by that electromagnetic radiation. And that inverted image in your retina is further carried into your brain. That information passes through the thalamus, which acts like a filter, and goes to your visual cortex. There you are getting an experience, as it were, of that object. Now please see, electromagnetic radiation is photonic light, photons, it is colorless. When it enters your brain, it is sparking off your neurochemistry. Neurochemistry also is colorless, but your experience of the object is colorful, formful. How do I actually perceive the object as a three-dimensional image in real space and time? With so much of color, you actually experience the beauty of this entire world. You are experiencing it. You are not just catching the impression, the light it is throwing out. You are experiencing it. How does this happen? When the electromagnetic radiation is colorless, formless, when your neurochemistry is colorless, formless, but you experience the object.
The hard problem of consciousness is the problem of how physical processes in the brain give rise to the subjective experience of the mind and of the world. When I see visual inputs come to my eyes, photons hit my eyes, they send a signal that goes up the optic nerve to the back of my brain. It sends neural firings propagating throughout my brain. But there's also a subjective point of view. There's what it feels like for the agent who is seeing the scene. When I see you, I see colors, I see shapes, I have an experience from a first-person point of view. There's something it's like to be me. And this is the conscious experience of seeing. It's part of the inner movie of the mind. This inner movie has many, many dimensions. It has the dimension of vision, it has the dimension of sound, like a normal movie, but it also has touch and taste and smell. It has emotions, it has thought, it has a sense of one's body. All of this is subjective experience. And it's one of the most familiar facts in the world that we have this subjective experience. But it's also one of the most mysterious.
How does an impression, which is nothing but EMR, become an experience to you? This is a huge gap which consciousness studies is trying to explore.
One thing we're finding as the science of consciousness and the sciences of the mind develop is just there's this gap between all of our theories of the brain and subjective experience and consciousness. No matter how sophisticated our theories get of how the neurons in the brain, how any physical processes interconnect, that still doesn't give us an explanation of consciousness. You could know all there is to know about the physical processes in the world, and that still wouldn't tell you what it feels like to be me, to be you, to see red, to fall in love, and so on.
You see, the video camera, which is tracking images, that is also tracking the image and holding it in its memory. It is not experiencing the object, isn't it? You are experiencing the object. So awareness, self-awareness is required to experience a thing, not just memory. Finally, awareness is at the heart of experience. If you were not aware, if you were not self-aware being, you cannot experience the thing. Just like how the video camera, your mobile phone cannot experience anything. It can just hold the image for you. So experience itself is possible because awareness is the very seat of your experience, the very heart of your experience. So here, where science stops, science is still exploring, Yoga Vedanta make a tremendous contribution here. They help you understand what is the role of mind and this awareness in the perceptive process. Science will give you the information from the object to the brain, how you are perceiving.
Almost every science student will learn that we have heat sensors that are part of our nervous system. They become activated. They send neural impulses up from the sensor along the nerves into the brain, and therefore we feel or perceive that heat. You're saying that doesn't really explain it.
Well, I think that you can tell a nice scientific story about what happens when the stuff in the environment hits the heat sensors. It sends a story up the optic nerve, and something happens in the brain, and some neurons wiggle up there and so on. And then you said, the last step, and therefore we feel it. Now that's the interesting step. How does that happen? How do those neurons firing and wiggling away inside the brain suddenly give rise to this subjective experience of hotness, the feeling of heat? Nothing in the scientific story, it seems, tells you why that has to happen. How does the water of the brain turn into the wine of consciousness?
From the brain to consciousness, Yoga Vedanta contribute immensely in our understanding how exactly we perceive, how the perceptive process takes place. So let me show this to you on a slide. First of all, science, how does it explain the perceptive process? This you should see on a slide, and then you see, first of all, acknowledge this fact that experience is always in the first person, right? Awareness is required to experience an object. I told you just now, if you are not a self-aware entity, you cannot experience. You can just catch an image, you cannot experience it. So awareness is required for experience, so experience is always in the first person. In science, the perceptive process is like this. Look at the first image, electromagnetic radiation entering your eye, goes to your brain, the visual cortex in your brain, and there it is interpreted as that particular object. You are actually seeing the object. Such a huge object, even this vast universe, you can actually feel it, you can see it. How does this happen in the brain? You know, there is David Eagleman's documentary, The Brain. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It is worth seeing because he puts very Vedantic questions there. He asks, how does the brain actually construct reality? What is involved in the perceptive process?
When I'm in the world, my senses are flooded with sights and sounds and smells, and it seems obvious that reality is just out there. There's a person, there's a cab. All I have to do is show up, and my senses let me experience it all. But there's a twist to this story. Our perception of reality has less to do with what's happening out there and more to do with what's happening in here. To understand what's going on, we first need to know how information from the world around us gets into the brain. It feels as if sights and sounds just stream in through our eyes and our ears. But imagine if you could climb inside a human skull. When you step into the skull, you'll find there's no way for light or sound or smells to get directly in here. This is a sealed chamber. So the brain sits in darkness and in silence. It's in total isolation. Your brain's never seen the outside world, but somehow you experience it. Now, this might seem straightforward because we have portals to the outside world, like your eyes and ears, but these aren't just piping in sights and sounds. Instead, photons of light or air compression waves, these are getting converted into the common currency of the brain, electrochemical signals. These signals travel through dense networks of brain cells called neurons. There are 100 billion neurons in the human brain. And in every second of your life, each one of these is sending tens or hundreds of electrical pulses to thousands of other neurons. And somehow, all of this activity produces your sense of reality. So whether it's the bark of a dog or the smell of coffee or a view of a beautiful sunset, it's all made of the same stuff in here. And this is the stuff of reality.
So here, science will tell you, basically now see the next image, you see the bird is the object there. Now the light thrown out by that object finally enters your brain, and the brain synthesizes this knowledge through recognition. So memory also is involved usually in the perceptive process, that this is a bird. From your eye it is going to your brain, and finally brain is experiencing the object and giving you the information, this is a bird. So this wonderful explanation science is giving us, how it is happening. What all is involved in the perceptive process? First of all, object of perception. Then the light it has to throw out. If it didn't throw out light, you would not perceive it even if it was there. And if it completely reflected off all the light, it would appear only white. If it did not reflect any light, it would appear dark. So you determine the object by the light it throws at you. When it enters your eye should be in proper functioning order. An inverted image is formed on your retina. That in the form of electrochemical signals is going to your brain. So electromagnetic radiation and neurochemistry both are involved. And on your brain, in the visual cortex, you experience the object. How? Nobody can tell, right? This is the perceptive process which science tells us. Now what has yoga, the yogic sciences to add to this? They give you a very important point here. See, we just discussed attention is required for perception. So where is mind here? Attention is a faculty of the mind, isn't it? If you are not paying attention to something, you are not going to perceive it even if it is there. You are looking at it, but you are not seeing it.
But the eyes are not enough. The mind is the light of the eyes. If my mind is not connected to my eyes, connected in the sense I am not paying attention to what I am seeing. You know, we speak about a blank stare. You often get that in Vedānta classes, a blank stare. What is this guy talking about? A blank stare. The mind may be thinking about something else. Sometimes your eyes are open, you're listening to some wonderful music. So you're actually not seeing what's in front of you. You're listening to some wonderful musical performance. And therefore, the mind has to pay attention to the information which is being supplied by the eyes. So the mind illumines what is being provided by the eyes.
So where does mind come into the picture? So yoga will give you this answer. Perception takes place when the mind catches the object, as it were. Mind is involved in this act of perception. The mind, the object, as it were, impinges on the mind. Mind draws the object within your system, and it modifies according to the nature of that object. This modification is called a vṛttis. It's a very important concept in yoga. Try to understand this. According to the object, the mind modifies. Vṛttis means a whirl. It modifies according to the object. So look at this image here. You have the object, and then the same process, it's going to the brain, the light from the object, and there mind becomes involved. See, try to understand it like this. The brain is the hardware, mind is the software. So the essential process is happening in the mind, because the mind modifies itself according to the object, creates the vṛttis. Now if this impression is very deep, it translates neurophysiologically into an engram in your brain. It's a sort of a etch on your brain due to the perceptive process, due to the repetition of that. And as a result, what happens? The vṛttis in the mind is illumined by consciousness, by awareness, and as a result you feel you know that object. So they work in coordination, the brain, mind, awareness. So immediately you feel you have perceived that object, you know that object. So this is the yogic explanation. Now what are the extra factors involved here? mind is involved, faculty of attention is involved. All this science is not explaining, isn't it? The creation of vṛtti, the illumination of that vṛtti through awareness, and thus you know. So this is the yoga on perception, the yogic process on perception.
So ātma is pure, but in its conditioned state it appears to be impure because it is identifying with the vṛttis. Vṛtti means the states of the mind. Because what is happening in our conditioned state, how we are dealing with the world, we are actually dealing only with the manasik vṛttis, which in Nyaya, Yoga, they are defined 5 types of vṛttis. So Yoga is dealing all about vṛttis. Chitta vṛtti nirodha yoga. Yoga is nirodha of the vṛtti. So vṛtti means the state of the mind. Whatever we experience outside, it creates a vṛtti in our mind. And then with vṛtti only we are doing whatever we are doing. If I am seeing you, because there is a vṛtti in my mind, that may say I see you. If I am talking to you, that is a vṛtti. When I hear from you, that is a vṛtti. When I eat something, that is a vṛtti. So these are all vṛtti. And these are made of maya. All these vṛtti is nothing but maya. So sometimes they are coming, sometimes they are going. Vṛttis are not permanent. If you taste something, the taste does not stay in you all the time. You taste, then it is over. You see something, you hear something, everything is temporary. So coming, going, coming, and finishing. And the ātma is sitting inside, watching it.
And I told you, at the heart of the perceptive process is consciousness. The mental awareness which you generally feel, which accompanies thought, which makes your thoughts things for you, as it were. You experience your thoughts. So this invested awareness, technically it is called chidabhas, which means mental awareness. This mental awareness illumines this vṛtti. The mental awareness, what is its source? The source is the ātman, consciousness standing behind the mind. That consciousness gets reflected in the mind, chidabhas is created, which means mental awareness is generated, that illumines this vṛtti, and that is how you know the object. That is why you actually get the experience of the object right within you. The object may be outside of you, but you are experiencing it where? Within you. You don't experience it there.
How do you experience anything? How do you know anything? How do you know I am sitting here? Because your eyes pick up this image. Remember how sight works? It's fascinating. And it really makes an interesting point. The point that it makes eventually is that you do not directly see the Swami sitting in his chair. Absolutely not. You do not directly see the Swami sitting in his chair. Why? Do you remember in a science class when you learned about how eyesight works? It begins with light bouncing off the object, striking your eyes. On the front of your eyes are 2 lenses. Those lenses focus the image on the retina of your eye, which is in back of the eye. And if you remember, the lenses also invert the image. So first thing that I find very interesting is right now, on the back of your eyeballs are 2 1/4-inch tall, upside down Swamis. Correct? Absolutely correct. On the back of your eyeballs are 2 1/4-inch tall, upside down Swamis. Then things get more complicated. As you remember, the retina has all these sensors, the so-called rods and cones, which convert this optical light into nerve impulses. These nerve impulses go from the right eye into the optical cortex and left part of the brain, goes from the left eye to the optical cortex and the right part of your brain. This is getting very confusing. Already we got 2 Swamis. They're upside down, 1/4-inch tall, and they're backwards because this optical nerve does this crisscross. Is that what you see? Upside down, 1/4-inch tall, backwards. That's not what you see. So the one that you see, first of all, is not the one that's out here, which is the first step. Then we come to the next step. Your eyes pick up through this very complex process, and the eyes then convey to your brain all these nerve impulses. Is that what you're experiencing right now? Nerve impulses? You see me. The me that you're seeing is not out here on the chair, it's in your mind. An image of me has been fashioned in your mind. Now, I went through this process to illustrate. These are three completely different levels. There are objects outside in the world. They're 3 steps removed. Because these objects outside in the world, first of all, have to be picked up by these really complex sensors we have, eyes and ears and our other senses. Every one of the senses are incredibly complex, the way that they work. And then even the senses, all they pick up is nerve impulses, right? So those nerve impulses are not what you perceive. Those nerve impulses go to the brain, and through a miracle that no one quite understands fully yet, as a result of all these inputs to the brain, an image of me is formed in your mind. That's the 3rd step. And the image of me in your mind is known to whom? The simple answer is to whoever is seeing it. That person is called Sakshi, witness or observer. The one who witnesses the activities of the mind. We're describing your experience, right? Now you know it's not so straightforward. 5 minutes ago, you thought you were looking at me. If you've understood what we just discussed, you should now conclude that you are not looking at me directly. Rather, you are seeing an image of me in your mind. This is extremely important. That's not exactly how we commonly think, right? And this is what Vedānta does so brilliantly. It challenges our usual conclusions about our experience.
And so what is in the mind? The image taken from outside of this room through the eyes is recreated in the mind. And that's what we see. Modern science, physiology, psychology, they are all in agreement in this. We are not directly seeing the things of this room. All that we experience throughout our lives, we experience as recreations in our mind.
So our mind is like a screen, because everything that we are experiencing it in the mind only. At the night time when we see dream, that also is seen in the mind only. So mind is the screen and we are the seer. And whatever external we are experiencing, that all it happens in mind. So actually we are simply seeing a movie, because all the objects external to us, we are actually not having any relation with that. We are inside. We are just seeing that on the screen. So when we are experiencing something, we are simply experiencing its reflection in the mind, the image. And then we say that we are seeing this person or anything. Actually, we are not seeing that person. We are seeing its image only. So this is all the game of the mind. So all these vṛttis keep happening in the mind. They keep coming and going. It's like a cinema. A television screen. All these photons or light which are coming, and in that we keep imagining. Actually, there is nobody in that. Is there any person actually on the theater screen, on the television screen? Is there any person actually there? There is nothing there. So the world is operating like this only. When we are seeing somebody, we are seeing like what we see on television screen only.
What Vedānta will tell you is it points to something very obvious. Vedānta will tell you, you see, where is the perceptive process occurring? It is occurring in your awareness. Apart from your awareness, there is no perception, isn't it? Things can be outside your skin. They are not outside your awareness. So this is the diagram. So your awareness, as it were, encapsulates the entire perceptive process. Subject and object are in awareness. everything is an appearance in your awareness. Fundamental fact about perception is, it is because you are aware that you are perceiving. So perception is happening in awareness. It is not outside your awareness. Object and subject are nothing but appearances in your awareness. This is what they are adding to the perceptive process.
So, we are the light which illuminates, which lights up all our experiences. Which experiences? Not just experiences in the mind. Everything outside is taken into the mind and experienced in the mind with the light of consciousness. The light of the self, you the self, are that light which is continuously giving you a series of experiences. All that we have experienced in our lives, in fact, that's what we call life, a series of experiences. That's all. And all of those are nothing but objects, gross or subtle, all illumined by that consciousness, that light of the consciousness.
So at the heart of the perception process lies consciousness. You can never fully explain perception without explaining consciousness. That is why. We are halfway through when we try to explain perception without bringing in mind and consciousness.